Now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade J.J. Williams, and today we bid farewell to our month of musicals as we discuss the Rocky Horror Picture Show, starring Tim Curry, Barry Bostwick, Susan Sarandon, Richard O'Brien, Patricia Quinn, Little Nell, Peter Hinwood, Meatloaf, Jonathan Adams, and Charles Gray. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And as I said in the introduction, today we bid farewell to our month of musicals, and we're going to discuss the late night science fiction double feature picture show, the Rocky Horror Picture Show to be precise. And our movie begins with a pair of floating lips, which welcome the audience to a science fiction double feature. And throughout the film, a criminologist narrates and provides commentary on the events that occur during the film. Now, following the wedding of their friends, a naive young couple, Brad Majors and Janet Weiss, get engaged and they decide to celebrate with their high school science teacher, Dr. Scott, who taught the class where they first met. On their way to Dr. Scott's house on a dark and rainy night, they get lost with a flat tire. Seeking a telephone to call for help, the couple walk to a nearby castle where a party is being held. They are welcomed in by the strangely dressed inhabitants, led by the butler, Riffraff, the maid, Magenta, and a groupie named Columbia. Despite feeling apprehensive, they stay and meet the owner of the castle, Dr. Frankenfurter, who invites them to stay the night. With the help of Riffraff, Frank brings to life a tall, muscular, handsome, blond man named Rocky. As Frank vows that he can improve Rocky into an ideal man in just 1 week, a delivery boy named Eddie, half of whose brain Frank used in the creation of Rocky, breaks out of a deep freeze riding a motorcycle. Frank kills Eddie with a pickaxe and justifies it as a mercy killing. And then Rocky and Frank depart for the bridal suite. Brad and Janet are then shown to separate bedrooms where each is visited by and seduced by Frank. Meanwhile, Riffraff and his sister, Magenta, torment Rocky. Janet, who is upset and emotional, sees Brad smoking a cigarette in bed with Frank on a video monitor. She then discovers Rocky cowering in his birth tank. While tending to his wounds, Janet seduces Rocky, while Magenta and Columbia watch from their bedroom monitor. Dr. Scott, who is now an investigator of UFOs for the government, arrives at the castle in search of his nephew Eddie, completely unaware of Brad and Janet's presence. Everyone discovers Janet and Rocky together, which enrages Frank. Now, at this point, Magenta summons everyone to an uncomfortable dinner, where they soon realize that the meal has been prepared from Eddie's mutilated remains. Columbia, who was Eddie's lover, flees from the table in tears, while Janet runs screaming into Rocky's arms, provoking Frank to chase her through the halls and to the lab. Frank then uses his Medusa transducer to turn Dr. Scott, Brad, Janet, Rocky, and Columbia into nude statues. After dressing them in cabaret costumes, Frank unfreezes them, and they perform a live cabaret floor show, complete with an RKO tower and a swimming pool with Frank as the leader. Riffraff and Magenta interrupt the performance and declare mutiny as they disapprove of Frank's extreme lifestyle and are ready to return to Transylvania. Frank then makes an impassioned plea to return with them, but Riffraff kills him, as well as Columbia and Rocky. Riffraff then warns Brad, Janet, and Dr. Scott to leave immediately as the castle lifts off into space. The injured survivors are then left crawling in the smog and the dirt as the criminologist concludes that the human race is equivalent to insects crawling on the planet's surface, lost in time and lost in space and meaning as our movie comes to its close. This movie was fun for me on a number of levels. Okay, number one, I've seen this numerous times. Truth be told, back in the days, some 22 years ago, I went to the Art Theater in Long Beach, California on an almost weekly basis to partake in the experience that is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, complete with people doing shadow cast, audience interaction, the whole nine. If you've ever heard stories or seen this in theaters with a shadow cast, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen, we've seen, we're there together. This movie is one of those that on its own is so cheesy, so corny, so bad that it's that damn good. I adore Rocky Horror. And this was not my first exposure to any of these actors, mind you. No, 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 nay, nay. I saw Rocky Horror much later in my life. I want to say I saw Rocky Horror for the very first time in the late 90s. I had already seen Tim Curry do a plethora of stuff, the least of which includes, Rooster and Annie, which we discussed earlier this month. If you missed that review, I'll link it up here. Saw him as Pennywise the Dancy Clown. Saw him as Cardinal Richelieu in Disney's Three Musketeers. Saw him as the concierge in Home Alone 2. If you missed that review, I'll link it up here as well. But I had seen him in a number of stuff. Susan Sarandon, I had known from a number of stuff. Meatloaf, I knew more from his music. And I had seen him in Fight Club, which again, if you missed my review of Fight Club, I'll link that up here as well. But it wasn't until seeing this much later, post my Rocky Live experience, that I realized so many of the homages that they were paying in this movie. Because essentially, Frankenfurter is Dr. Frankenstein, and Rocky is his monster, the Frankenstein monster. Riffraff is Fritz, the hunchback assistant. You can kind of go on from there. Magenta is akin to both the Bride of Frankenstein, and I forget the hunchback's name that took over, and I want to say it was either House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula, but there was a female hunchback assistant. And while Magenta doesn't have the hunchback herself, she is a female assistant to Frank. So you've got all these little homages to the OG Universal movies in this. Then you've got the references to things like Lost in Space and, The Day the Earth Stood Still from some of the Psalms. And it's funny to me because every time someone that I know that has seen this movie tells me they're afraid of clowns and they won't watch it because they're afraid of clowns, I'm like, dude, it's just Dr. Frankenfurter in clown makeup. It's like, how can you take it seriously? Think about Dr. Frankenfurter and put him in clown makeup. And more often than not, I can get people to then sit down and at least watch his version of it, the 90s version, because then when he starts doing his shtick, they just automatically see Frankenfurter and they can kind of relax a little bit. But in addition to my own experiences with this film, Jeff actually was part of the cast, both Sins of the Flesh in LA and the Midnight Insanity cast down at the Old Art Theater, the same theater I went to. He went down there, became part of the cast after he had already moved in, started living with me because he had had his experience from the other cast. He was Eddie. On stage, he would perform as Eddie on a weekly basis. So I've got that tie to it. And then just late last year, my daughter was exposed to this movie for the first time because of her love for musicals. And she now adores this movie. When she auditioned for Matilda this year, she sang There's a Light Over at the Frankenstein Place for her audition. Nobody else in her class sang Rocky Horror. They're all singing Hamilton or some of the other stuff. She's breaking out some Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then when I sat down to watch it this time, to take my notes to review it, we introduced my girlfriend's daughter to it for the first time. And she literally looked at us after the movie and said, "What the fuck did I just watch?" So you take all of that and you clump it into a pot, like chili and the different ingredients, and you stir it all up. This movie is one that is going to be embedded in my soul until the day I die. With that being said, all of that talk about it, when it comes to my rating of this film, it should be no surprise. I give Rocky Horror Picture Show 5 out of 5 stars. What do you guys think of the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Let me know. If you're watching the premiere, leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. Let's have that conversation, that discussion, that debate, that interaction that I'm always asking you guys for in the comments below. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, as we open the doors back up for Stat Boy Sports Bar featuring Dory Lou. The food is hot, the beer is ice cold, and the seats are warm, so pull up a bar stool and engage in some professional sports conversation with your hosts, the Stat Boy, Mike Caldwell, and his cohort, Dory Lou. And then later on tomorrow evening, after NXT, talk wrestling or anything with Jeff Meacham. That's right, the flagship show will be back all across the multiverse of media, whether it's live or Memorex. Make sure you tune in on Tuesday evening to check out the flagship show, Talk Wrestling. You don't want to miss out on any of that content right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, on the Jeff Meacham Network, across the Jeff Meacham Network, multiverse of media, Stat Boy Sports Bar featuring Dory Lou, talk wrestling or anything with Jeff Meacham. And then come Wednesday, we kick off our brand new month of movies. You don't want to miss any of that. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure that notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out anytime a video drops right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel or anytime we go live, as is the case with Stat Boy Sports Bar, Open Mic Night, pay-per-view PLE coverage, etc. Share these videos with your family, friends, loved ones, coworkers, movie fanatics, cinephiles in your life, fans of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, fans of Tim Curry, fans of Susan Sarandon, fans of Barry Bostwick, fans of Meatloaf. Anybody you can think of that would enjoy this content in this video, share it with them, as it's the only way we're going to boost my visibility up in YouTube's algorithms so I can eventually get monetized and begin making some money on the channel here. Thank you once again to everyone who joined me and tuned in today. It means so much more to me than you'll ever know. And I will see you guys next time.